Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving right into the source material behind an absolutely fascinating, almost contradictory reality, the Chinese economy. You see, on one hand, it's this undeniable global high-tech titan that's literally shaping the future of manufacturing, but on the other hand, it's a nation grappling with a catastrophic debt crisis, and that's sending shockwaves through global markets that eventually impact all of us. So how in the world do both of these realities exist at the exact same time? Well, let's look under the hood. Okay, consider this staggering figure, 300%. That is China's estimated real debt to GDP ratio. When you deeply analyze the source data and add up all the corporate, household, and government borrowing, you uncover this massive hidden burden totaling roughly $52 to $54 trillion. I mean, that completely flies in the face of the official reports, which usually show China sitting comfortably below 100% national debt, making them look much safer than, say, the US or Japan. But as you'll see, the real story is hidden just beneath the surface. Which brings us to the core mystery of our analysis today. How exactly does a nation that's building the world's largest high-speed rail networks, throwing up skyscrapers in literally 19 days, and pioneering global green energy grids get buried under an estimated $9 trillion local debt anchor? To really understand this paradox, we have to take the exact mechanisms of its economic engine apart, piece by piece. Let's start from the very beginning. Section 1. The 1978 Economic Catalyst. So, following decades of immense economic disruption and isolation, China in 1978 was overwhelmingly rural and impoverished. Recognizing that this rigid isolation was just completely unsustainable, leadership under Deng Xiaoping made a massive pragmatic pivot. The philosophy they adopted is beautifully captured by Chinese economist Chen Yun as the bird cage economy. Imagine private enterprise and market innovation as a bird. Now, the bird is allowed to fly around, innovate, and generate massive wealth. But, and this is absolutely crucial, it remains strictly confined within a cage representing state macroeconomic control. The state can shrink or expand that cage, controlling the flow of capital and resources whenever it wants. And this precise hybrid philosophy fueled the fastest sustained economic expansion in human history, pulling nearly 800 million citizens out of extreme poverty. Section 2. The local mayor economy. Now, to deeply understand how this incredible growth actually played out on the ground, we've got to look at the incentive structure driving it. Here's how it works. Beijing sets a national GDP growth target, let's say 5%. A local mayor, who is desperate to stand out, borrows heavily to fund massive, flashy infrastructure projects. By artificially pumping all this money into the local economy through construction, that mayor hits, say, 7 or 8% local growth. And because they overperformed, Beijing promotes them to a wealthier province. Economic performance wasn't just a number on a spreadsheet, it literally became a political resume. This created a ruthless tournament where officials were heavily incentivized to borrow and build at breakneck speeds, pretty much completely ignoring long-term financial sustainability. Section 3. The real estate time bomb. This borrow and build engine really kicked into high gear thanks to a single sentence. In 1988, a constitutional amendment allowed land use rights to be transferred. Now, because local governments didn't have a modern property tax system to rely on for income, they suddenly stumbled upon a golden goose. They kept state ownership of the land itself, but they sold long-term leases to private developers for massive sums of cash. This gave local mayors an endless stream of revenue, sparking a debt-fueled frenzy. We're talking about the creation of entire ghost cities and endless rows of vacant apartments built purely on speculation. And you have to remember, because of strict state capital controls, which means Chinese citizens are legally restricted from moving their money into foreign stocks or overseas investments, domestic real estate just ballooned. It ended up representing roughly 30% of the entire national economy. It wasn't just a place to live anymore. It became literally the only viable life savings vehicle for a rapidly rising middle class. People were taking on astronomical mortgages for apartments that hadn't even broken ground yet. They trusted that the state-backed market would only ever go up. But, eventually, gravity always takes over. The central government, terrified of this massive bubble bursting, enacted the 3 red lines. These were strict financial limits that instantly cut off access to new debt for over-leveraged developers. And without new debt to pay off old debts, giants like Evergrande completely collapsed under their own weight. Millions of everyday citizens were left paying mortgages on unfinished, unsellable homes, effectively wiping out their life savings. The profound social fallout from this has led to the lying flat movement. Basically, disillusioned youth facing high unemployment and a shattered social contract are increasingly choosing to simply opt out of the high-intensity hustle culture altogether.
Section 4. Deflation and hidden debt.
Now, this real estate collapse directly choked the wider economy and exposed a mountain of hidden local debt. Remember those local mayors who needed to borrow to build? Well, because Chinese laws strictly limited how much direct debt local governments could hold on their own books, they got creative. They created a shadow banking loophole known as Local Government Financing Vehicles, or LGFVs. They set up these off-balance sheet corporate entities to borrow massive sums of money on their behalf. But when the property crash happened, developers stopped buying land. Local governments lost up to 50% of their revenue overnight, which meant these LGFVs couldn't pay their lenders. And just like that, an astronomical $8 to $9 trillion debt hole, hidden right beneath the surface, was suddenly exposed. The paradox here is just striking. On paper, the official national narrative presents a financially pristine central government with debt sitting comfortably below 100% of GDP. But the hidden reality? When you actually factor in the LGFVs and the local municipalities that really constructed the nation's infrastructure, it's an entirely different story. Collectively, they are drowning in over $52 trillion of total debt. That pushes the true national burden to roughly 300% of GDP. So you're probably wondering, why hasn't this caused a total systemic banking collapse? Well, it's because Beijing is aggressively buying time using a debt swap program. Think about it like this. Imagine you are holding 5 maxed-out credit cards with punishing 20% interest rates. You can't make the payments, and you're facing default. So you go to a major bank and negotiate a bailout to combine those cards into a single, low-interest, long-term loan. You still owe the principal, sure, but your monthly payments won't bankrupt you today. The central government is stepping in to act as that major bank, quietly absorbing the toxic local LGFV debt into manageable national bonds just to prevent an immediate, localized banking collapse.
Section 5. The high-tech pivot.
But buying time is really only half the strategy. Recognizing that real estate and low-cost manufacturing can't sustain the economy anymore, the state is heavily subsidizing a massive climb up the global value chain. Back in the 80s, the national goal was for households to get refrigerators, washers, and TVs. In the 90s, they leveled up to air conditioners, VCRs, and computers. Today, the entire focus is on what the state calls the new quality productive forces, or the 3 new things. We're talking electric vehicles, solar panels, and lithium batteries. They are pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into these specific sectors to secure higher profit margins and future energy independence. By intentionally starving the speculative real estate sector of credit and redirecting state loans straight into advanced manufacturing, the strategy is undeniably working. China now controls 80% of global solar panel manufacturing, 70% of EVs, and a staggering 90% of lithium batteries. They are churning out green tech at a scale and price point that is fundamentally reshaping global trade. They're flooding international markets with affordable tech and transforming their economy from the world's cheap assembly line into a sovereign high-tech powerhouse. And why does this matter to us? Because this manufacturing dominance directly impacts consumer prices, trade policies, and domestic industries in our own economies. Ultimately, China is currently attempting one of the most difficult economic tightrope walks in modern history. As they intentionally dismantle their crumbling real estate foundation and attempt to replace it with cutting-edge solar panels and EVs, the biggest question in all the source data remains: can this shiny new high-tech engine generate enough wealth to pull the country out of its deflationary exhaust and a $9 trillion debt trap before the whole system stalls? It's quite literally a multi-trillion-dollar question, and the outcome will dictate the economic reality for all of us for decades to come.